form of crisis.
The Constitutional Council's decision to stand up to the president and reject his suggested election date is seen as a tribute to Senegalese democracy. And the new election date comes as a relief to many Senegalese who will finally have a say over their country's future. Nicholas Hawk, Al Jazeera, Dakar.
For years, an estimated 1.7 million undocumented Afghans have been living in Pakistan. But since the government crackdown on migrants began late last year, many have been forced out. Now a deadline for them to leave has passed, with overstayers facing monthly fines of $100. Osama bin Javed reports from Torkham on the Afghan-Pakistan border.
After spending 40 years in Pakistan, Ehsanullah is back in Afghanistan. He stayed there to settle business affairs when the first deadline for undocumented Afghans to leave expired. Now he's decided to return home. He was 12 years old when he crossed into Pakistan with his family, and now he has a son of nearly the same age.
We are happy for the people of Pakistan. We have spent a lot of time there. They've been good to us. Pakistani police, however, did not treat us right. The government and police never behaved in a good way. Afghans were detained and forced to pay bribes, and then they would let them go.
Of an estimated 1.5 million undocumented Afghan refugees in Pakistan, more than 500,000 have either been deported or have left voluntarily since last year. It's a difficult transition for hundreds of thousands of people to leave everything behind and come to this country. This is just a staging point. From here, their journey continues to their places of origin inside Afghanistan. The government of Pakistan says it's expelling everyone who does not have legal documents. That means thousands of Afghans, many who were born in Pakistan, must leave.
All of the illegal migrants are being sent back. They have no right to be part of any activities in Pakistan. Those citizens who are here legally with Afghan civilian cards or refugee status, Pakistan's policy is that they cannot take part in political activities in the country.
Many Afghans believe the expulsion is a pressure tactic to push the Taliban government to hand over people who Pakistan calls terrorists. The Pakistani Taliban, or TTP, carries out attacks inside Pakistan while its leadership is based in Afghanistan. Pakistan says the measures are to curb illegal migrants who are a burden, and some are involved in criminal activities. Near the border with Pakistan, this 2-kilometer-long camp is ready to deal with tens of thousands of new arrivals. Those who arrive here are registered, provided with temporary shelter, and given $130 each to help with their onward journey. Taliban leaders deny the influx of refugees will be an additional burden. Refugee camp officials say, regardless of their illegal status, people should be treated with respect.
Right now, the Pakistani government is lenient with the refugees, but still we are prepared in case they change their minds. They've even jailed women and children. We have told them that if they have to, they should arrest or jail the men, and they shouldn't arrest women and children.
Ehsanullah's son misses his friends and school in Pakistan. For now, he's helping his father start again in Afghanistan, which he hopes will be their home forever. Osama bin Javed, Al Jazeera, Torkham, Afghanistan.
Well, still ahead here on Al Jazeera. Anger in Colombia as thousands push back against government reforms. Plus,
I'm John Hendren in North Carolina, one of the many Super Tuesday states that Nikki Haley lost. After that, she's bowed out of the race.
Hello, we've got some rather lively weather in the forecast for parts of the Middle East as we go through the next couple of days. Not too bad at the moment, largely dry across the Arabian Peninsula. A bit of a wintry mix further north up towards the Caucasus, and that's going to run its way towards the Caspian. But you can see one or two showers there into Oman on the other side of the peninsula. 1 or 2 showers here, and that's going to be the feature for some wetter weather. Southern parts of Saudi seeing some lively showers as we go through Friday. And take a look at Saturday. That looks like a really nasty one for the UAE. That will cause flash flooding. Something to keep an eye on. That wetter weather coming in across that eastern side of Oman. Elsewhere, temperatures rising at last for Kabul. We're getting up to around 8 Celsius. Still some wintry showers in the mix there. And still some wintry showers just across the Caucasus. The eastern side of the Mediterranean is largely dry for now, but 1 or 2 showers, and you can see they will extend their way down towards Gaza for a time, retreating through Thursday and then pushing in once again as we go on into Friday. But the wetter weather and some wintry weather will be there across Turkey. Chance of some wet weather too, just pushing in across the far northwest of Africa. A few lively showers just rolling across the northern parts of Morocco into northern areas of Algeria, and showers increasing for West Africa.
President Biden says he wants a two-state solution for Palestinians and Israelis, but does anybody believe it's doable? What does Israel's war on Gaza say about U.S. foreign policy? And what are the long-term consequences for the region and the world?
A quizzical look at U.S. politics, the bottom line.
There is no channel that covers world news like we do. We revisit places, we stay. Al Jazeera really invests in that, and that's a privilege as a journalist.
You're watching Al Jazeera. A reminder of our top stories this hour. Senegal's President Macky Sall has dissolved the government and set a date for the delayed presidential election. The decisions came just after Senegal's Constitutional Court ruled that the election must be held before President Sall's mandate ends next month. South Africa has asked the UN's top court to impose additional emergency measures against Israel, which it says is breaching those already in place. South Africa says Palestinian children are starving to death as a direct result of Israel's actions. And at least 3 sailors have been killed in a Houthi attack on a cargo ship in the Gulf of Aden. That's according to US Central Command. They are the first fatality since Houthis began their attacks on commercial shipping in protest against Israel's war on Gaza. Family members of Palestinian victims in Gaza have met UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Some of the families have lost more than 100 of their relatives in Gaza. Kristen Salumi reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
They met privately with the Secretary General and members of the Security Council, and publicly with members of the media, a group consisting of about 10 Palestinian Americans and a woman from Gaza who recently escaped with her injured sister. And they all shared heartbreaking stories of immense suffering in Gaza, where family members have been lost either to bombs or snipers or from lack of food and medicine. One woman, a doctor from Texas, has lost 150 members of her extended family. She described her conversation with the U.S. ambassador to the UN.
I think we were heard, and I think it's important that all of us have shared our stories. The disconnect is always the powerlessness that seems to be communicated. We understand, but again, today none of us are here for condolences. We're not here for apologies. We're here for immediate action.
Meantime, the UN's humanitarian coordinator for Gaza says they don't have enough aid pre-positioned should Israeli troops invade Rafah.
We are very worried about the incursion into Gaza, the military incursion, if it does take place, because simply we're not prepared. Right now, we're actually addressing the needs of 1.4 million people who are displaced into the Rafah area. So we have a contingency plan in place to do that. If a majority of those people are forced to move because of any military incursion into Rafah, we have a contingency plan on top of a contingency plan. And we don't have the supplies to pre-position the necessary material, food and shelter to absorb people if they do move. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know where people would move to.
But despite these pleas and concerns, still no action from the Security Council. Kristen Salumi, Al Jazeera, the United Nations.
Haiti's capital remains mostly paralysed by violence, with gangs warning of civil war if Prime Minister Ariel Henry doesn't step down. Henry is still in Puerto Rico, unable to return home. There's been a surge in violence in the past week since he left the country in a bid for international aid. Now, Haiti is in a state of emergency. The international airport in Port-au-Prince remains closed and most businesses have shut down. But Washington says it's not calling for Haiti's Prime Minister to resign, but does want him to speed up a transition to inclusive governance and ensure free and fair elections.
It's not the United States acting alone in this with this regard. It's the United States, in consultation with partners in the region, are having these conversations. And what we are saying to the Prime Minister is that he needs to expedite the transition to empowered and inclusive governance, including the appointment of a transition council. So that's what we'll continue to discuss with him.
Daniel Foote served as the US Special Envoy to Haiti in 2021. He says Washington's reluctance to see Ariel Henry step down is not helping the situation.
It's not up to the United States. And they have been asking Ariel Henry for 2.5 years to form a transition government and to have a dialogue with civil society and opposition, and he's refused to do so. So at this point, in the past week, the protests in Haiti have turned into an all-out revolution, and you have the elites aligned with the oligarchs, aligned with the former army guys, aligned with the gangs. Everybody wants this guy gone, but by waiting so long, and the U.S. is still looks like they want him to go back there. The issue is, if he goes back there, he's not going to survive. And I don't mean as prime minister, he will not live through the month if he goes back there. So the United States really should scratch his head and figure out what is the right thing to do for Haiti. It's not Ariel Henry.
Protesters in Mexico have knocked down a door to the presidential palace while the president was inside giving his daily press conference. They were demanding justice for 43 students who disappeared a decade ago. Their abduction by a cartel in Guerrero state has been the focus of a long-running investigation. A government human rights commission said the incident involved law enforcement officials. In Colombia, thousands of protesters vented their anger against President Gustavo Petro's push for economic and social reforms. The president's attempts to overhaul healthcare, pension and labour laws are facing widespread opposition. Alessandro Rampietti reports from Colombia's capital, Bogotá.
Fuera Petro, Petro out, has become the rallying cry for those who express a deep discontent with the reforms backed by the leftist government of Gustavo Petro. Thousands took to the streets in the capital Bogotá and across major cities in the largest rallies since Petro, a former rebel fighter in his youth, took power 2 years ago, promising to fight poverty and inequality. They believe overhauling healthcare, pensions and labor laws put them and the country at risk.
I'm here for the future of my children, for the youth, because they will not have one otherwise, because I'm afraid to lose my health services. Yes, we need to fix some things, but not destroy the system that we have.
Protesters also marched against Petro's attempts at reaching peace deals with remaining armed groups in the country, which they say weakened the military. Some flew Israel's flag in support of its war on Gaza, which Petro openly criticized. The protesters also believe that the return of a former paramilitary commander, Salvatore Mancuso, is a political move to target their leader, former President Álvaro Uribe. Uribe is accused of having links to Mancuso's group.
That is clearly what is happening. That's why they went looking for Mancuso in prison and are offering him benefits to attack others. The president and his political party are full of resentment and hatred. What can you expect from a person that was a guerrilla fighter?
The protesters who took to the streets on Wednesday were in general whiter, older and richer than the average Colombian, representatives of a portion of the country that has long been in power and is hoping to regain it soon.
If they want to grow they need to diversify the number of parts that protest against the Petro government, and they need to draw out a stronger reaction from the administration. Having said that, I think the opposition still relies on very polarizing figures such as Álvaro Uribe Vélez as their main sort of standard bearers, and that could bring out a huge weakness about them.
In the end, this was a major success for opposition parties in Colombia. It shows that their base is motivated and willing to come out and protest against policies they believe could hurt the country. And for many here, this is also the first step of a campaign to retake power in 2 years' time. Alessandro Rampietti, Al Jazeera, Bogotá.
In the US, Nikki Haley has pulled out of the race for the Republican presidential nomination after a crushing defeat in the Super Tuesday primaries. She congratulated her opponent, Donald Trump, but did not endorse him. Her withdrawal sets the stage for a Trump-Biden rematch in November's presidential election. John Hendren reports from Raleigh in North Carolina.
A good-looking crowd.
Nikki Haley came closer to the White House than any Republican woman in U.S. history. She overcame a field of debate rivals she dismissed as the fellas.
It's now one fella and one lady left.
But she could not overcome former President Donald Trump. After a delegate drubbing in 14 of the 15 states on Super Tuesday, she ended her campaign, acknowledging that her improbable path to victory was now all but impossible.
The time has now come to suspend my campaign.
The former South Carolina governor and United Nations ambassador made history as the first Republican woman running for president to win a primary,
God bless you.
defeating Trump in Vermont and the District of Columbia, and did it as the daughter of Indian immigrants.
My mother, a first-generation immigrant, got to vote for her daughter for president. Only in America. His record has been...
She sought to lead a more traditional, non-MAGA Republican Party, backed by deep-pocketed donors, and she increasingly traded barbs with her rival.
At some point, maybe we should say the reason that America keeps losing is because of Donald Trump.
By the way, she's not up to the job.
But in state after state, Republican voters answered with overwhelming support for Trump. She pointedly declined to endorse her rival, citing a quote from former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher.
Never just follow the crowd. Always make up your own mind. It is now up to Donald Trump to earn the votes of those in our party and beyond it who did not support him.
Whether Haley will ultimately endorse Donald Trump remains an open question. And there's competition for her supporters. President Joe Biden said he would welcome them into his campaign.
The delegate math was all but insurmountable. After Trump's near sweep on Super Tuesday, with 1,215 delegates needed for the Republican nomination, Trump is tantalizingly close with 995. John Hendren, Al Jazeera, Raleigh, North Carolina.
A protest vote in the US state of Minnesota in this week's Democratic nominating contests is raising more questions over President Joe Biden's re-election campaign. 19% of Democratic voters chose uncommitted in the presidential primary on Super Tuesday in protest against the government's support for Israel's attacks on Gaza. Protest votes of up to 12% were recorded in 6 other states. A film technician in the United States has been found guilty of involuntary manslaughter over the fatal on-set shooting of another crew member. Hannah Gutierrez was responsible for the firearm that discharged a live bullet on the set of the movie Rust in 2021, killing cinematographer Helena Hutchins. Gutierrez faces up to 18 months in prison. Actor Alec Baldwin was pointing the gun at Hutchins when it went off. His manslaughter trial is set for July this year. Well, that's all from me, Tom McRae. For the moment, the news continues here on Al Jazeera after The Bottom Line, which is coming up next. Do stay with us.
Hellish scenes in the Gaza Strip as Israel's onslaught continues.
There's a deliberate omission of Palestinian humanity in Western media, and it needs to be questioned.
Sustained coverage that actively humanizes Israelis and actively dehumanizes Palestinians.
This is not the time for journalists to turn away.
Tracking those stories, examining the journalism and the effect that news coverage can have on democracies everywhere, here at The Listening Post. Hi, I'm Steve Clemens, and I have a question. As Israeli forces are literally firing into groups of starving Palestinians trying to get food aid in Gaza, when does the Biden administration say enough is enough? Let's get to the bottom line. Israel's war on Gaza has gone far beyond killing 30,000 Palestinians and injuring more than 70,000. Now Israel is preventing basic food aid from reaching civilians who are facing starvation. U.S. President Joe Biden and his administration are still fully behind Israel, refusing to call for a permanent ceasefire. And U.S. calls for more humanitarian aid have just fallen on deaf ears. There are signs that Biden's policies will cost him votes during this election season, but will that force him to change course and end support for Israel's war? Today we're talking with Matt Duss, former foreign policy advisor to Senator Bernie Sanders and currently executive vice president at the Center for International Policy. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today. We're looking at the breakdown of aid. I mean, honestly, people are desperate to survive, desperate for food, starving, surrounding aid trucks, and being shot on. I just want to ask you, is this moment going to create any change in U.S. policy?
I would hope it would, but at this point, I don't know how many deaths it's going to take for President Biden to shift policy. You're right. Not only are the Israeli government not owning this, you have Israeli ministers who are praising the actions of Israeli soldiers in shooting these starving and desperate Palestinians. And as you said, these people are desperate. They are not getting anything close to sufficient humanitarian aid, and that is because Israel has a policy of preventing humanitarian aid from getting to them. The administration recognizes that. In fact, just the other day, there was a story about how the administration is considering airdropping aid into Gaza. Now, let's think about this for a minute. The United States would consider airdropping aid into Gaza because the military that it is arming and supporting unconditionally is preventing that aid from getting into Gaza in violation of U.S. law, by the way. And that's important to acknowledge, too. U.S. laws prohibit militaries that receive U.S. supplied weapons from preventing humanitarian aid getting. It prohibits them from using those weapons in ways that violate international humanitarian law. That is clearly what is happening here. And yet, after weeks and months of evidence that basically war crimes are being committed, clear violations of international humanitarian law, the Biden administration refuses to shift course.
Months ago, we did a report that looked at Senator Bernie Sanders' letter to dear colleagues saying that the United States could not be complicit in what was unfolding with what he called the indiscriminate killing of Palestinians.
I've been waiting. Biden has used that word himself several times.
Right, and Joe Biden has used that thing. So I'm just wondering what is happening politically in this town, inside Washington, D.C., and around the nation in terms of responding to that. Did Bernie Sanders get any traction at all? Have others that have tried to shine a spotlight on what's unfolding right now? I understand there was a horrific October 7th attack. We're watching a nightmare, a horror situation now in response. And Bernie Sanders has said, we are now complicit in this. What are your thoughts?
He's absolutely right. No surprise. I agree with my former boss. We are absolutely complicit in this. We are complicit in the situation that led up to October 7th, a situation of continuing siege and blockade on Gaza and occupation, expulsion, and daily humiliation for Palestinians in the rest of the occupied territories. And as you said, yes, the atrocities of October 7th are indefensible. Israel has every right to respond and defend its people, as Senator Sanders has acknowledged. But what we have been witnessing for the past almost 5 months and are continuing to witness today is not self-defense. This is something else. So again, your question, what will it take? What will it take to really see an upsurge in Washington? Again, that's a tough question to answer because we are definitely seeing energy on the streets, protests, especially from young progressive Democrats and beyond. We've seen an increasing number of members of Congress, not nearly enough, but some, raising these questions and raising the pressure. But as you know, the conversation about Israel in Washington, kind of occurs in this weird never land, where the kind of conditions that we impose on other partners and recipients of U.S. aid simply never apply to Israel. And the other piece of this, too, is when you have a Democratic president, unfortunately, the case is Democrats are much less inclined to criticize. What we are seeing is clearly a failed and inhumane, and I would argue immoral policy.
Well, let me ask you about this, and this is an equation I don't fully understand, folks. On one hand, the United States is blocking all efforts to impose any international sanctions on Israel for this. It has said that it is working at the same time to get food, support, aid. I mean, Secretary of State Antony Blinken and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan talk about how hard they're working to overcome Israeli resistance, which they are very public about, to get aid in. And yet we are still, as I understand it, providing without condition bombs and munitions and even seeking more support for Israel. In the eyes of the world, whether you're in a developed country or a developing country, what does that equation look like?
Well, it looks incoherent because it is incoherent. President Biden clearly believes that the way the U.S.-Israel relationship should work, and he's believed this for a long time, is that if we have differences of opinion, we express those privately in conversations. But publicly, it's basically shoulder to shoulder, lockstep support, unconditional support. And, obviously he's the president, he gets to make those decisions. But my response to that is, how is that going? That does not appear to be going very well. And I think in the eyes of the world, the United States just looks feckless and weak. This is a partner state that is enormously reliant on U.S. support, diplomatically, politically, in intelligence, militarily. And the president of the United States has simply taken the tools of leverage off the table and told his Secretary of State and others to work without those tools. The United States could cut off aid, we could diminish aid, we could slow aid, we could stop vetoing resolutions in the UN. There's a whole range of things, an escalating menu of options that we had if we decided to apply real pressure, which we should have been doing long before now.
I'm going to ask this question carefully. If President Biden fails to use his leverage to constrain Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's choices in this war, to get a ceasefire, to get aid to people in need, and to create a demonstrable difference in the on-the-ground circumstances, given what we just saw in Michigan with 100,000 people basically voting uncommitted within the Democratic primary and not voting for President Biden in their own party, do you think Joe Biden will lose this election coming up?
Again, I will answer it carefully as you asked it carefully. One never should overstate the impact of any foreign policy issue, I think, on U.S. elections. But I think what's important to note is that for many Democrats, particularly young Democrats, the issue of Israel-Palestine, this war in Gaza, is not just a foreign policy issue. It is an issue of social and racial justice. And that's why it resonates as strong. One of the reasons why it resonates as strongly as it does. Listen, I think that 100,000 votes for uncommitted is clearly a message. I think it was actually an impressive effort, given what a short time frame it had to get up and going. I know there are similar efforts in other primary states. And I think it's important to acknowledge that these are from Democrats who understand the stakes. They're using a tool to send a message in a way that is not intended to undermine Biden's reelection, but simply to send the message, which is entirely appropriate, that this policy is outrageous. And I do think that if President Biden doesn't shift this policy, and I don't mean a shift in messaging, he does not have a messaging problem. He has a policy problem. And I think if we're talking about an election that was already going to be very close before all of this, we're talking about an election that will very likely come down to a few 100,000 votes in a few key states. This could make a difference.
Matt, I want to ask you about comments that the president made. They were made regarding the talks between Israel and Hamas, which the United States, Egypt, and Qatar are mediating. Let's hear what the president said.
My national security advisor tells me that we're close. We're close. It's not done yet. And my hope is by next Monday, we'll have a ceasefire.
Do you think those are solvent comments, or is the president disconnected from reality?
No, I mean, it's good to hope for things. I hope we'll get a ceasefire Monday too. It doesn't look like we're much closer. But the bottom line, listen, they should continue their efforts to get that agreement to release the hostages. But the decisions by Israel and Hamas, the United States should make its own decisions. We are in fact obligated under existing U.S. law to make decisions with regard to our support for Israel in this war, unrelated to whether Israel and Hamas come to that ceasefire agreement, which I very much hope they do.
I want to show you a quote from Nikki Haley. In this quote, she writes, "They were warned that the sky would fall if we moved our embassy. They warned that our allies would turn against us. Americans would be killed and war in the Middle East would quickly ignite." Guess what? That's just about an embassy, and I don't want to mislead people to think that that is the only issue. But when you come to the Abraham Accords, and one of the notions of the Abraham Accords is you could do a lot of deal-making in the Middle East and ignore the Palestinian issue. You've written yourself about this recently, about the president's own view that somehow you could do a deal with the Saudis, between the Saudi and the Israelis, and as part of an Abraham Accord-like process, maybe get some sort of Palestinian state pathway. People are tired of the word pathway. But then third, use this new arrangement to take on Iran and Iran's interests in the region. I'm just interested in how you see this, because when you talk about U.S. actions and decisions, how badly aligned is the U.S. frame of reality and what it's trying to do in the Middle East with the realities on the ground in the region?
Well, no, I think, yes, it's a great question. I think Haley's comment just shows the blindness that has guided not just Republican policy, but U.S. policy for a long time. And I think Biden, unfortunately, bought into this as well. They initially, kept the Abraham Accords at arm's length, but after a few months, basically decided to embrace it. And part of that logic is, as you said, that the Palestinians can just be shunted aside, thrown a few crumbs here and there to keep them quiet. But we saw moving of the embassy, other steps the Trump administration took, which are consistent with that approach, which is just Israel gets whatever it wants and the Palestinians get a cage. That is what led us to October 7. Again, that's not to absolve Hamas for their choices. Obviously, their choices to commit that atrocity are the key decision there. But it did not begin. History did not begin on October 7. Now, getting to Biden's approach, I mean, as I wrote, it's important to understand that the administration, their project in the Middle East right now is guided, as is most of their foreign policy, by one thing: strategic competition with China. And they see, this Israel normalization deal, which in my view, as I've written, is mainly a U.S.-Saudi security deal that's kind of wrapped in a candy coating of peace with Israel in order to sell it to Democrats. But that's the main function of that, is to box China out of the Middle East. There's also a component of confronting Iran, but as you know, I mean, Iran and Saudi Arabia and other countries in the region have been reaching slowly, step by step, towards some form of détente, which is good, because ultimately Iran is going to be part of that region, just as Israel is. So any kind of arrangement that seeks to kind of box Iran out, I think is not going to be sustainable either. That's not to downplay Iran's horrible behavior in the region or to its own people. I mean, we clearly need to take steps to confront that, as we have been doing for a long time. I think we should take a different approach. I know that we were both supporters of the Iran nuclear agreement, and regret Trump's withdrawal from it and Biden's failure to get back into it. But I do think it's important to understand the key aim of their Middle East policy, which once again is China.
I'm just interested in kind of the message and brand of the United States when it comes to democracy. As you look at what you see unfolding right now in Israel, Gaza, what you see unfolding in the region, does America have standing any longer? Taking what you just said about this being a Saudi security deal, in terms of its intent and purpose right now, how much does America lose standing in the region, given that approach?
I think we lose enormous standing. I mean, President Biden is fond of this saying, we should lead by the power of our example, not the example of our power. And I think in that standard, we are failing. The example we are setting by continuing to unconditionally back this catastrophe in Gaza is sending a horrible message. And I would add, especially in the wake of the Russian war on Ukraine. As I've written, I think the Biden administration's approach to Ukraine has been very good. It's been effective. It's been moral. It's been principled in helping Ukraine defend itself against an illegal invasion. I think all of the principles they laid out, this entire argument they made in support of the Ukraine policy, they have effectively burned that to the ground by the way they've approached Israel's assault on Gaza. Again, I'm not going to pretend these two things are exactly the same. They are not. But if we are talking about a set of principles, if we're talking about international law and the need to observe it, there's such a stark double standard being applied to these two conflicts, and the entire world can see it, and they have acknowledged it.
Let me ask you a question about the American political scene. You know, my best efforts to describe what's happening in the United States is that we're seeing what's always been in America. It was, a slightly isolationist wing that really does not see being engaged in the world as being in the interest of the United States at all. And this populist merger with this notion that we can withdraw and not be in. When you look at the chaos that you're seeing in Israel, Gaza, the weakness of the President of the United States in this case, or you see the rejection of the notion that Ukraine is relevant in any way, or the idea that maybe we just leave NATO. How worried are you about a real isolationism taking hold in this White House and in this country as we see brewing right now, but with the 2024 elections and after?
Right. It's interesting. I don't know if I would characterize it as isolationism. I would characterize it as just kind of a unilateralism. Trump is, I know he's labeled an isolationist a lot, but I don't think he is. He just has a very different approach to how the U.S. should behave in the world, which is an America completely unbound by any rules, an America that behaves essentially as an imperial power that seeks tribute, demands tribute from the rest of the world by virtue of our power. That's not isolationist. That's just imperial. But I see what you're saying. I mean, a lot of Americans have very serious questions about this kind of set of multilateral organizations and partnerships and treaties and alliances the United States helped build and in which we have embedded our interests. They have questions about, is that serving our interests? Is that serving my family, my community? And I do think one of the lessons coming out of Trump's victory, and I think some people around President Biden, to their credit, understand this, is that we need to do a better job of helping engage with these questions on the part of the American people to explain why some of these foreign policy choices are in their interest, that actually help their families, help their communities. But we have to actually make a credible argument that it's doing that. I don't think we can make that argument about Gaza. U.S. support for this war is not making Americans safer. It is making Americans less safe by virtue of just vastly diminishing our power and our credibility and our ability to stand up and speak credibly for a set of very important principles.
We just see a case where the Palestinian Authority cabinet has been dissembled, has been dissolved. I guess my question on that is, do you see U.S. influence on the Palestinian side, and particularly with the PA, as leading any direction that will get us to a different equilibrium in this relationship? Many Palestinians looked at the PA as essentially the guarantor for Israeli security and Israeli security services. I'm just interested in that move, which has been welcomed by the United States, while seeing no, I should say, change in government in the Israeli cabinet.
Yeah. No, I will say, I mean, as you said, I mean, that is how, unfortunately, the United States has treated the PA as essentially a subcontractor of the Israeli occupation. The priority there being that it delivers security not for Palestinians, but for Israelis. And I think changing that approach is absolutely necessary if we're going to move in a better direction. I would say about the dissolution of the Palestinian government, that it's a step toward if it is a step toward reconstituting kind of the Palestinian national movement, or creating a kind of unified consensus-based Palestinian voice that can negotiate eventually with Israel, that's good, because that is absolutely necessary to get to a resolution, is to have a Palestinian leadership that can make credible commitments around the negotiating table, which we simply do not have right now. And again, part of Netanyahu's strategy was to make sure the Palestinians stayed divided. Gaza ruled internally by Hamas, and Fatah with its, the areas that they have some control of in the West Bank. So ending that division and supporting the reconstitution of a Palestinian national voice and leadership is absolutely necessary. Certainly, this is something the United States cannot do, but we can get out of the way. We can support them as they do it. But importantly, we have to recognize that a credible Palestinian leadership supported by the Palestinian people is going to include people that we do not like, just as the Israeli leadership includes people we do not like. And I'm not just talking about Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, even though we very much do not like them. There are others who have been parts of Israeli governments in the past, who speak for, legitimate constituencies among Israel. So we just need to prepare. We just need to prepare to accept a Palestinian leadership, with people that we're not crazy about. We need to respect Palestinian politics enough and take Palestinian politics seriously enough to acknowledge that they get to pick the people who speak for them.
Let me just ask you finally, what are Palestinians being asked to do at this moment? Are they being asked to accept the unacceptable and to remain in a place where there are no buildings, infrastructure? I mean, if you're in the West Bank, you've got killings, harassment going on there. You've got basically a destroyed and flattened infrastructure in most of Gaza. We're walking March 10th, Ramadan begins. I'm just interested in what Palestinians are being asked to do in this moment.
I mean, in Gaza, they're being asked, we can all see what they're being asked. I mean, most of Gaza has been turned into the moon. They are living in tents, crowded in what was already one of the most densely populated regions of the world. So I lack the words to describe what they're being asked to endure in Gaza. And let's understand, Gaza was in the midst of an enormous humanitarian crisis before October 7th. And as you described in the West Bank, it's a daily grind, a humiliation of checkpoints and harassment by settlers whenever Palestinians, are able to leave, their just population centers and villages. The Israeli military has total control and goes anywhere it wants in the entire West Bank with complete impunity. And this has been the situation for years and decades. Okay, and this, I just want to say, has been part of Hamas's recruiting program. This has helped to make the argument to many Palestinians, and this is an enormous tragedy, that the way to achieve your goals, the way to achieve freedom, the way to take control is to use violence. This is a lesson that the United States has helped to teach, because the promise that was made to the Palestinians years ago was embrace diplomacy, stop violence, and diplomacy and negotiation is the way to achieve your liberation. And we have helped to show them that that is not true. And we need to change that equation very quickly if we're going to get out of this.
Well, Matt Duss, Executive Vice President of the Center for International Policy, thank you so much for sharing your candid views with us today.
Thank you, Steve.
So what's the bottom line? Israel's deadly incursion into Gaza, triggered by a surprise attack that knocked Israelis sideways on October 7th, has turned into one of the world's worst nightmares. Gaza's living conditions have disintegrated. No schools, no health care, no housing, nothing. On day one, Israel said it wouldn't allow food, medicine, water, or fuel into Gaza. So U.S. President Joe Biden and his team just can't feign surprise that people are starving and dying 5 months later. Yet they still refuse to play hardball with Israel, still send munitions and bombs that kill Palestinians, and still insist that they're doing our best, as the White House spokesperson says, to encourage Israel to change course. But with each passing day, Palestine punctuates the weakness of the United States vis-a-vis its own ally, and reinforces the idea that this is not some small regional mess, but rather a lesson to other countries that America is somehow diminished now, and that if it won't stand with people who are under physical and moral siege now, it's hard to believe it will do so anytime in the future. And that's the bottom line.
Starvation is being used as a weapon of war, and the only way to stop the ongoing starvation is to allow aid in. people are surrounding the trucks filled with the flour, just hard to break it and shows the level of difficulty because of the shortage of humanitarian aid.
We have no blankets, no food and no water. I prefer death to this humiliation.
The war has not killed us yet. It seems that we will die of hunger. We can't find food.
People say that they're stuck between death, starvation, and displacement.
Hard-hitting interviews.
As a UN ambassador, position given to you by, or earned, I suppose, you've described that as better than...
It's better than anything.
Thought-provoking answers.
My question to you, are there good coups?
I think this is the most difficult question I've had to answer.
Facing realities.
US veto in the Security Council. This is a major stumbling block, is it not?
It absolutely is.
Hear their story on Talk to Al Jazeera.
اختي كمان اشتقت لك. تعالي يا اختي الحق تشتري. ياي انت في مدرسة الهندسة؟ حواليكم كثير. انتوا بالهدنة حكوا لنا بكم تيجوا. كان احنا كثير منيح انه بس انتوا الحين يعني بالمدارس بيصير بالمدرسة عندكم شيء؟ لا بس يصير قصف حوالينا. صاروا في مصابين مرة. أبوي كان عنده القصف بالمدرسة. يو أنا كمان خيلتي بالمدرسة وإحنا بالمعسكر. إحنا بالدير. أنا بفكركم بالمدرسة. لا إحنا بالدير. بندار الهندي. خلصت كده لكن شو ما نقول بعثت لك انا رسائل ما وصلناش انا بعثتهم هيك. يلا يلا.
You're welcome to the maiden edition of
How come say we all day matter inside we all they suffer? Something they cause me, they cause you, they cause your son and daughter. Where we all feel come together and try to sort each other. Then you go turn around and sell out just because of dollar. Managers they think how fast he go fetch up something today. Forget about him, people make them find them our own way. Forgetting say the same people put on for where he day. He cast too high to see suffering below, he's too far away. Them get eyes, but them know they see. Them get heart, but them know they feel. Some too they get mind, but them know they think. That be why we all day inside a boat where we they sink. I say them get eyes, but them know they see. Them get heart, but them know they feel. Some too they get mind, but them know they think. That be why we all day inside a boat where we they sink. Myopia, they know they see nothing. Ice cold heart, they know they feel nothing. Bad minds, all they know they think about you. That be why we all day inside a boat where we I say them get ice, but them know they see. Them get hot, but them know they feel. Some too they get mind, but them know they think. That be why we all day inside the boat where we they sink. I say them get ice, but them know they see. Them get hot, but them know they feel. Some too they get mind, but them know they think. That be why we all day inside the boats where we the sink.
There they are, here we are. And why is that song on my lips this morning? Pump it, jam, pump it up, yo, stump it. It's way
I
from
would have said
the 80s or 90s. So why am I starting like this? She said something to me. She needs that pep, that energy this morning. I'm trying to see whether that song will
All I said was pump it into me. Pump some energy into me.
That's exactly what I'm doing. Get dancing, get it jiggy with it. It's another beautiful morning, and we're here on the AM show. My name is Sweetie Abochi, and
I'm Benjamin Akakpo. Good morning to you. It's always our pleasure to come and be the first people to welcome you to the start of the show or the start of the day right here on Joy News, your home of independent, fearless, incredible journalism.
I like the way you go fearless, like a fierce lioness, you know?
I like to, you know.
So we're about to give it to them,
Yeah. Hot.
Water. You proverb ready?
Oh, Jesus. You go first. I think I was something.
No, you go
No,
first.
come on, Benjamin. Do me this favor. Go first.
All right, so here we go. Okay. This one I didn't really prepare, but it comes to mind. And that's what I'm going to share with you this morning. In Satya Nina Nyepe. The fingers are not equal. You'd see that your index finger, the other fingers, the pinky, the thumb, all of them are different. Each one has its own use. There are things when you're sewing and use the thumb for. And the meaning is simple. Basically, everyone has something. What you've come with, use that. Be content with it. Don't count other people's blessings. Count your own because you've been blessed too. You have something in you. Let no one put you down. You're special. That's my little proverb for you today.
I'll simply go with which means a lot of meat doesn't spoil the soup. And it means that no matter what, nothing is ever enough. You know, even the rich people want more wealth. In the other way, you can also say that every little helps, or every little drop of water makes the mighty ocean. So keep going, keep dreaming. Whatever it is you're looking for, don't settle, don't get comfortable. you can never overachieve. You can only
Right.
do your best and give your best.
I say the sky is not the limit.
That too, you know. So
Beyond the sky.
So
Come to think of it,
Yeah.
that's what we're doing on the show.
Yeah.
2 pieces of, if you like, meat, but we are still making it rock.
yeah, I don't know what you're saying, but that's how you're welcome me to the start of the show. This morning, of course, I'll serve you the news in a bit, and then we get into the news review. And for today, NDC parliamentary candidate for South Tongu, Maxwell Lukuto, will be our guest for the news review.
Well, right after that, we'll serve you sports as always. Muftau Nabila Abdullahi will be on hand, and then we get into the big stories. Now, today, starting up, we're hosting Member of Parliament for South Dai, Roxanne Nelson Dafiamepo. You would know that he was part of the minority MPs who did the symbolic handing over or commissioning of the National Cathedral yesterday. They were heckled, but they still went ahead and did it. He's also part of the sponsors of the anti-LGBTQ bill. We'll be engaging him on these and other issues this morning as he joins us for breakfast.
The National Cathedral, huh? But, well, we'll get into that later on in the show. Also, today we've got a conversation on the prevalence of teenage pregnancy in Kwalano. Data from the Ghana Statistical Service shows that about 15.2% of female adolescents in Ghana, aged between 15 and 19, have ever been pregnant. So the prevalence within the age range is almost 1/5 of the global prevalence. The regional disparities are striking, with teenage pregnancy rates ranging from 6% in Greater Accra region to 26% in the Savannah region. We'll get into the nitty-gritties of that later on in the show.
And then we'd be telling you about the Certified Water Education Ghana Group. Now, the primary objective of this initiative by Grant for Safe Water and funded by the Paul Dew Jensen Foundation is to build certified technical and vocational educational training programs for students in Ghana to increase the capacity and skill levels of young Ghanaians in the water sector. We'll be telling you a lot more about what they've been up to right here on the show.
And then we get into our favorite part, and we interact with you. Open the phone line, but you can also join us on social media during the course of the program, on JoyNews on TV, on all social media platforms. Let us know what your thoughts are on everything we'll be discussing later on in the show. So when we do open the phone lines, please call us and join us.
Well, that's how we're going to do it. But for now, before she gets into the serious stuff, serenading you with the news, if you like. Getting jiggy with it. Get jiggy on the news.
Let's get jiggy on the news.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to JoyNews Desk. My name is Aisha Ibrahim.
Let me tell you, this is not a small job at all.
What can you report from the Fana community?
We are still sounding the alarm for people who are hiding to know that help has come.
The board is supposed to be meeting this morning to deliberate on this nominee.
Yes, this problem has been recurring over time.
The people have invested the fruits of their excellence, and you want to throw it away because you think you can. No, it's not lawful for him to do it, period.
What's the basis that these financial assurances will be giving latest today?
If you follow what had transpired over the week, we got the information when the president addressed the May Day celebration, indicating that China is going to come on board.
This is the AM News on the AM Show. Let's get into the details. Starting with President Akufo-Addo has charged Ghanaians to preserve the hard-fought 31 years of stable democracy, though not perfect. He's highlighted the consistent improvement seen in each election during the Fourth Republic. Now, the president emphasized the need for continuous learning and increased tolerance for differing opinions, cautioning against any regression. He's been speaking at the 67th Independence Day celebration held in the Eastern region.
My dear compatriots, fellow Ghanaians, the theme chosen for this year's Independence Day celebrations is our democracy, our pride. And I welcome all of you to Koforidua, the capital of the Eastern region, which is hosting the celebrations this year. The decision to rotate the scene of the national celebrations around the country, instead of staging them only in Accra, the nation's capital, has certainly turned out to be a welcome nation-building exercise that helps us to focus attention on a different region every year, and at the same time rallies the nation together in that region. Our host this year, the Eastern region, was very much at the center of the independence struggle of our country. It is home to 3 members of the Big Six of the United Gold Coast Convention, UGCC of blessed memory. I've mentioned specific groups that make up the Eastern region, but as I stated earlier, it is a region where the whole of Ghana merges into a melting pot and lives in harmony, and different groups feed on the strength of each other for the good of the whole. This is the same scenario that is played on the national scene, where different people have come together to form the Ghanaian nation and a national identity for the past 67 years. Fellow Ghanaians, we have good reason to choose as our theme and to celebrate our democracy, our pride, at this 67th anniversary of our independence. We are a democratic nation, and not every country can make such a claim. It is important to note that the democratic system of government we have today was not given to us at independence. More than 100 years of British rule have not prepared us in any way for democracy. There is nothing democratic about colonial rule. And whatever we have today, we have worked out for ourselves. All the defining elements of a democracy that are part of our governance architecture today, we have had to fabricate ourselves. Everything we know about elections today, and we know quite a bit, we have learned through hard practice, and in the past 31 years, we have been stable. We've not got a perfect system, but every time we've had elections during this Fourth Republic, it has been an improvement on the previous occasion. We have still a lot more to learn, especially when it comes to the tolerance of opposing views.
On the economy, President Akufo-Addo is optimistic Ghana is on the brink of a breakthrough as the worst challenges are now in the past.
Fellow Ghanaians, I know that we have gone through difficult economic circumstances, but it is clear that we have overcome the worst, and we are looking forward to better times. I wish to make reference in particular to 2 projects coming on stream that should make a great difference to the economic fortunes of our country. I refer to the successful selection of strategic partners that will work with the Ghana Integrated Aluminum Development Corporation, GIADEC, to build a new alumina refinery and develop mines at Nyinahini in Pasaso, as 3 or 4 projects being executed under the Integrated Aluminum Industry IAI projects. I witnessed the signing of 2 agreements in Accra recently. Firstly, between GIADEC, a wholly owned public entity, and Rockshore International, a wholly owned Ghanaian private company, selected after a rigorous process as a strategic partner to develop a mine at Nyinahini in Pasaso. The other major project that is coming on stream, which is bound to make a dramatic change to the economy, is the Adar Songor Salt Project, being spearheaded by Electrochem Salt Mine Limited, led by the dynamic Ghanaian entrepreneur, Mr. Dan McCaughey, aka McDan. After many years of disputes, which prevented the exploitation of salt at the site, work has finally started, and salt will be mined on a large commercial scale. The Electrochem salt mine will be the biggest salt-producing facility in the whole of Africa. These are figures that should spell a significant change in the economy and cheer us up. I am optimistic that together with other initiatives of this government, we are on the verge of a breakthrough in our economic fortune.
Now, Central Regional Minister Justina Marigold Hassan is asking Ghanaians to use the independence celebration to protect the peace of the country. According to her, that's the only way the country can achieve its development targets. She was addressing the 6th March parade in Cape Coast. There's more in this report.
The Regional Minister, Justina Marigold Hassan, emphasized the need for the public to uphold peace, especially when the general elections are just around the corner.
We all know that this is an election year, and very soon political parties and interest groups will have various political platforms across the length and breadth of the country with different messages. Let us take cues from what happened from years back in countries like Sierra Leone, Sudan, Congo, Somalia, Colombia, Liberia, La Côte d'Ivoire, just to mention a few. There is no need to belabor the boils of war and the reign of humanity in these countries. I wish to use this occasion to urge all of us to guard against all tendencies that can destroy our peace and democracy.
Justina Marigold Hassan called for a rededication to Ghana's development.
Significantly, investment has been made in areas of roads, infrastructure, education, health facilities, tourist sites, agriculture, and sport, among others. Our fisherfolk, traders, farmers, youth, and women groups have all benefited from national policies and programs. Truly, we have much to be grateful for. Distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, those of us in the Central region have also contributed immensely to Ghana's proud democracy of having conducted ourselves peacefully in this dispensation. As we mark 67 years of nationhood, I urge all stakeholders from the public and private sectors, civil society organizations, and indeed all Ghanaians to rededicate ourselves to the cause of Ghana's development. We must work even harder to reduce corruption and poverty, build more infrastructure, create jobs for the youth, empower women, and sustain our development.
The students, as well as the security agencies, took part in the parade in the Central Regional Capital, Cape Coast.
High School.
Now, for the 4th time in 5 years, the Independence Parade for the Upper West region was held outside the regional capital. The event, which took place at Laura, had 8 contingents of security personnel, 35 basic second cycle and tertiary institutions and voluntary organizations taking part in the parade. Upper West Regional Minister Dr. Hafiz bin Sali said, though the Electoral Commission has lots of responsibility to ensure credible election, much also depends on political parties to demonstrate elections are not a do-or-die affair. Rafiq Salam reports from Laura.
A contingent of security personnel drawn from the Ghana Armed Forces 10 Mechanized Battalion, Ghana Police Service, Ghana Prison Service, Ghana National Fire Service, Ghana Immigration Service, and the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority took part in the 67th Upper West Regional Parade held at Laura. They were joined in the 2-hour march past by 14 primary, 17 junior high, and 3 senior high schools. Also included on the list were 1 tertiary institution and some voluntary organizations under the instruction of Parade Commanding Officer C.C. Akabans.
The parade 2IC will be handing over the parade shortly. The parade
The number of participating schools and time for the event was reduced following reports of suspected cases of cerebrospinal meningitis (CSM) in the region. The region, in the past couple of months, had recorded 81 suspected cases of the disease and claimed 4 lives. The 35 basic, senior high schools, and tertiary institutions and the voluntary organization kick-started a march past, starting with the primary schools. The 10 Mechanized Battalion led the way when it came to the turn of the security contingents, starting with slow marching and followed by the other sister security services. They then moved into a high gear, quickening the pace of their movement and into quick march.
And lastly, is the number 8 contingent.
Upper West Regional Minister Dr. Hafiz bin Sali, in his address, paid glowing tribute to the founding fathers of the country and those who were involved in the country's fight for independence. Dr. bin Sali noted that in recent past, the West African sub-region has been under the threat of terrorism and violent extremism and tied it with the numerous chieftaincy and land disputes around the country.
West Africa has been under the threat of terrorism and violent extremism, rapidly spreading from the Sahel towards the borders. Many of our neighbors, notably Burkina Faso, have already fallen victim to attacks by these extremist groups. Internally, we have so many chieftaincy and land disputes around the country, serving as potential breeding grounds for internal tension and destabilization. We have had our share of political instability and experimentation about how we should govern ourselves. In the end, we opted for multi-party democracy under the 1992 Constitution. Even though it is not a perfect document, it has, this far, served us well, and we have witnessed the most sustained period of stability and economic growth in our country's history.
Turning to the 2024 general election, he noted that democracies are founded on credible elections, hence a huge responsibility lies on the Electoral Commission, government, and the political parties to ensure that the country has credible elections.
The government is doing its part to make the work of the Electoral Commission go smoothly. Meanwhile, a lot of responsibilities lie on the political parties to demonstrate that elections are not a do-or-die affair. Seeing the vigorous media and civil society organizations constantly scrutinize public discourse equally gives me pleasure.
And students of the St. Paul Lutheran School are hopeful the safety and peace being enjoyed in the country would be maintained. Speaking on the sidelines of a military drill organized by the school and security agencies to commemorate the country's 67th Independence Day, the students who dressed to represent the various security agencies also shared their pride in representing the officers. There's more in the following report.
Students of the St. Paul's Lutheran School of the view that the country has made great strides 67 years after gaining independence. Speaking on the sidelines of a military drill organized by the school and security agencies, they indicated that the development of the country hinges on security, adding that the country has made great progress in health development since Ghana gained independence.
I believe Ghana has done well because over the past few years, there haven't been any form of conflict or external aggression with the country. And yes, by the help of the army, we are maintaining peace across the borders of the country of Ghana.
Sudan was a country because when Kwame Nkrumah gained independence for us, he saved us from slavery and many other things. He built a lot of buildings for us.
Representing Ghana Army today is a privilege because they have been really helpful throughout the years of Ghana's independence. Yes, and they have really kept the country in shape for us.
We have to fight for nature and protect our city from enemies. And also, we have to protect ourselves from dangerous people who like to harm us.
Okojo Brakon, the executive director of the St. Paul's Lutheran School, the move is expedient in educating the younger generation and ensuring a better Ghana.
First for this drill is to inculcate in the children or to revive the spirit of patriotism among our children, so that when they grow up, they know that they have a nation, Ghana, that they have to die for, protect it, make it successful. We also want them to know that be aware about all the skill services in Ghana and their contribution towards the development of our nation, Ghana.
That will be all for the AM News on the AM Show. It's time now for the conversations and engagement. Up next is the news review. Please stay with us till 10 a.m.
You're welcome to the maiden edition of the JoyNews Impact Makers Award.
Tonight, we gather here to honor and celebrate individuals.
We celebrate the goodness in our humanity
and create more inclusive, compassionate, and thriving societies.
The overall winner, Isaac Ajoato.
In a land where dreams are often cradled in the arms of hope, there exists a league of unsung heroes. They are the silent architects of change, the torchbearers who illuminate paths where once there was only darkness. From the verdant stretches of our farms to the innovative labs of science, from the warm embrace of humanitarian aid to the simplest act of kindness, these are the change makers who sculpt the future of our nation, stage by stage. Unknown to them, their acts of selflessness have resonated across the land, stirring the hearts of many and sparking a movement of recognition and celebration. It's that time of the year again. JoyNews proudly presents the Impact Makers Awards 2024. Join us in our quest to spot and honor those steadfast warriors who are remolding the destiny of our communities and our nation. This is your moment to nominate the unsung hero in your midst, the beacon of change whose story deserves to be told. To nominate your Impact Maker of the Year, send your entries to impact.makersawards@myjoyonline.com. Let's amplify their stories. The Joy News Impact Makers Awards, celebrating ordinary people making extraordinary impact.
When I look at the economic management team, it is quite clearly a fantastic team. Professor Jambafo, Senior Minister Yao Osafo Maf. What a solid team.
This is an unaware government.
It is your essential guide to the pulse of Ghana's democracy. Election Brief offers you a front row seat to the latest updates, in-depth analysis, and comprehensive coverage.
What does this mean? We therefore project it is almost statistically impossible for President John Dramani Mahama to achieve 50% plus one. Our projection is that Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo will win the 2016 presidential election.
Champion, undefeated, no living.
During this campaign season, our experienced team of reporters will bring you exclusive insights, breaking news, and unbiased reporting from every corner of Ghana.
The people have met him with excitement and they keep chanting Savior to imply that they believe that he holds the key to turn the economic fortunes of the country.
As Vice President, I am like a driver's mate. But by the grace of God, if you make me president, I will be in the driver's seat with constitutional.
We dive deep into the start, the promises, and the people shaping the future of our country. Election Brief isn't just about the headlines. It is about the voices of the people.
This is an election. These people came to us that they are going to maintain everyone. And here lies the case. We have the videos, evidence. And now they've taken our names out. Look at the number of people here. And you expect us to let the election go on. Never.
Join the conversation and have your say. Your voice matters in shaping Ghana's future. Catch the Election Brief every weekday from 2 to 2:30 p.m. only on Joy News. Joy News, your election headquarters.
Welcome back. Time now for us to slice and dice the newspapers. But right before we get into that, I have to let you know this segment always brought to you courtesy of Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. And of course, they're offering you free prostate screening if you're a man, free fertility screening if you're a woman. If you don't check out your health could surprise you. It's like a car on which you don't do any maintenance, or you check some things and leave other things. And boom, someday you find out that your gearbox is out of shape, your engine is on full blast, it's getting out of order, and all of that. You need to check yourself out. Prostate, so little. It's very small, like a walnut or something, but it could mess you up. If you're a woman, your fertility, you take it for granted. Maybe you've not even given birth to children yet. It could compromise your ability to give birth to children. And even if you have, it could give you so many issues later on in life, which is why you want to be checking yourself from time to time. And the best place to do it, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. They are giving you all of these for free, screening for free. Reach out to them at any of their branches. Here in Accra, Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard. Kumasi, Chrono Magwe here behind the Angel Educational Complex. There's Takrady Anaji State, Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswa, and Isiama Nzema. Their call lines are 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. But for now, let me bring you the NDC's parliamentary candidate for South Tong in the person of Maxwell Lukuto. Good morning, Max. Maxwell, can you hear me? You'd have to unmute. If you can hear me, Maxwell, please unmute for me so I can hear you, even as I see it in your dashing green batakari with your hat. Okay, Maxwell is trying to. Okay, I can hear you now. The next time we go through this, I'm going to tax you.
Very well. Agreed?
We usually go through this. The next time I have to remind you to unmute, I'm going to tax you. Deal?
Apparently your sound was off and I was trying to find a way around it. So.
Oh, okay. So we found a way around it now. But thank you so much, Max. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Happy Independence Day has come to meet us, the 67th. And yesterday I was at the district level ceremony. You know, we have a new DCE. He was voted for just last week, Saturday. And this is his first official appearance in the public to perform his official duty as the new DCE of South Town. And so I was there in the company of the Member of Parliament and all other dignitaries in the constituency. And so, yes, we are happy that we have marked another day of our independence, and it's refreshing. It's good. We are okay, and we can be grateful to God because this is what we have, and this is what we can be proud of. It could be better than this, though, yes, but we can only thank God for how far He's brought us, yes.
All right, so as we usually do, I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to dilate on anything that has really caught your interest. I mean, I don't think we've had an interaction since the SONA was delivered. There's also the case about the LGBTQ bill. There's the case about the National Cathedral. So many things. I don't know what you would want to talk about, but over to you. You have about 2 minutes, maximum 2.5 minutes. Tell us what's on your mind.
So it's about this LGBTQ I++ thing that Parliament has finally passed, to the joy of 98% or more of Ghanaians, because it looked like the larger population of Ghanaians, including parliamentarians, have agreed that we should put something in place to deter people from especially promoting these LGBTQI activities in our schools and on our little ones who they would want to indoctrinate. Some of us are so highly elated to have this law passed. It's unfortunate that the president is dragging his feet.
So the bill has been passed. It's not law yet. So it's not been made into an act.
For it to be assented to by the president to become a law, yes. And so it's unfortunate that the president is dragging his feet. And even before the issue was taken to court, he preempted by saying that he knew somebody was taking it to court. The question is, how did you know that somebody was going to take the issue to the Supreme Court? Right. So I see it to be only for the economists. That is why he's dragging his feet. But apparently within his heart, I believe that he knows that this is what Ghana should be doing. And for me, in Africa, we are not the first country going to pass this law. Despite whatever the West will say about human rights violations and Odrigadekos and all the people in Ghana, I think that we have gone through the process and we are doing the right thing. They are just making commentaries.
Is that to say that you are not concerned about any human rights questions that may be raised on it?
It's not that I'm not concerned about any human rights these things that will be raised. This bill has gone through a lot of layers. I'm sure the human rights community has been consulted. They made their input. Parliament looked at it. We have gone beyond those stages.
The committee had its sittings, and some of them came and also made their presentations. That's true.
So for me, I don't know what else they are talking about now, because Parliament has been so meticulous with these things. It was the last day that Benumaki was trying to pull some strings. I don't know for what reason, but I'm sure we've gone through that stage, and all he said, the president should just assent to it. Yes, there's civil societies, Peace Council, Charismatic Churches Council, and all those other groupings who were for the bill. Let's make noise now and allow the president to sign, so that it doesn't look like it's a personal thing he's doing. I know the West is putting some pressure on him, and then they are threatening, especially about the economics. But for me, this is what we want for ourselves. And nobody, we are a sovereign state, nobody can dictate to us what we should do with ourselves. And so I think that we should just assent to it.
Anyway, even as you talk about that, Ghana Beyond Aid comes to mind. When you want to do these things, you might as well be self-sufficient in many ways as well, but you are taking money from the very same people who are in support of this. So you see here, you put your money where your mouth is. You want to do bele, bele, bele. Where's your money to even fund your budget? Your own budget, you can't fund it, and you need donor support. I guess all of that must be factored in, mustn't it?
Yeah, sure, it has to be factored in. But at the end of the day, for me, so that's why I am seeing President Nana Akufo-Addo as just being a rhetoric. He brings out many cliches, and he doesn't live to any of them. Ghana Beyond Aid, making Ghana the cleanest city, or Accra the cleanest city in Africa within how many years? 2-3 years, and we are in the 7th, almost ending the 8th year, and we aren't seeing anything. For me, so yesterday when I was listening to him at the 67th anniversary celebration, just making statements, I was just laughing, I was just giggling, because I know these are things he does, and he doesn't mean them. What do we mean by Ghana Beyond Aid? What has he done about it? Where are we now? Now that people have to dictate to us whether we can pass laws in our own sovereign state.
The president says he's proud of his record, of what he's done and what he's leaving behind. And other things he's also done. He promised free SHS, he's delivered. He promised 1D, 1F, among a number of other things. And he's delivered, hasn't he?
He's delivered the 1D, 1F where? How many of them? Where
At least,
are they?
no matter how many, I've been a chief critic of 1D, 1F, but he's built some. He's also supported some others. At least he's done something.
You see, for me, this was just dancing around the like musical chair, dancing around the chair and coming to sit on one. How many chairs do we have? About 15, and then you dance around, you sit on one, you wake up again. There are a lot of establishments that already existed, and out of nothing, they decided to give them tax rebate to absorb them into this 1D, 1F. Look at B5. What has it done specially about B5 to make it a 1D, 1F?
You're talking about the steel manufacturer or producer, B5 in Tema, right? Yes, anyway.
Yes. So, and many other companies that were already in existence, you just come and add, put some 1D, 1F signboard on the industry and claim it is a 1D, 1F thing. So for me, it's not really anything that we can tout.
But for some of them, the support was largely through maybe tax waivers and other things. That wouldn't be something that you would be able to quantify, but they would.
No, but the issue is that, you see, if we are looking for more money and we are taxing everything, including the bet that our little ones go through and our Momo transaction and all those things, why do you go and give tax rebate to somebody who is already established and doing good in his business just because you want to add a 1D, 1F establishment name to whatever they are doing? And for me, they are rather killing us to want to force the 1D, 1F into the system. Instead of going through the normal process, allow these people to pay their taxes and give us some relief by ourselves, they rather go behind, tax us, and go and give it free of charge to other people who are already established. For me, it doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. His record is not too good. Of course, I'm not expecting him to say that he hasn't done anything. Just like his vice president has said, you see, the vice president has passed a vote of no confidence in the president that he's advised to honor Planquet to. He said that there are many things that he's not done well, and when he becomes the president, he's going to take a lot of those things away. So if your vice president says that, and you are beating your chest to say that you have done so well, you are leaving a good record, then what are you talking about? Your own person who you sit in the same office with to discuss issues and to take policy decisions and to drive them. He's the one who is saying that most of the things you are doing, he does not subscribe to them, and that when he becomes president, he's going to take them off. So for me, that alone is the testimonial that his vice president has written about him. I'm not expecting him to come and tell me that he hasn't done anything, but of course, to me and to many Ghanaians, he's done little. And he's the worst president, I believe, that we've ever had in Ghana.
That's a pretty harsh verdict. But anyway, let's get into the papers now and find out what you think about some of these stories. The Daily Graphic newspaper this morning. Constitutionality of anti-gay bill challenged. Then Ghana paved way for Africa. Alassane Ouattara, the Ivorian president, said so. But now mentioning Alassane Ouattara, yesterday I wasn't the only one. You watched the images and then you saw, I don't know whether it was a gaffe because I hear the presidency or protocol said, oh, it wasn't a gaffe. But if you looked at the visage, the face of the president, and when his favorite chair, which is carried everywhere, was offered to Alassane Ouattara to sit on while he sat on a lower chair, you could tell something was not exactly kosher. Something was not going according to plan. And if you thought I only noticed it, people in-house noticed it. People on social media watching noticed it. And the question was that planned? Or was it a gaffe, so to speak? But Malta president arrives for 3-day state visit. 67th Independence Day celebration. Ghana beacon of hope, according to the president. Koforidua set alight. On the back page, German ADB supports establishment of garment factory at Savelugu, and NRSA rolls out speed limit technology mid-year. So the National Road Safety Authority will roll out Traffic Tech, a technology-driven road traffic enforcement initiative, by the end of the second quarter of this year. Now, the automated speed limit enforcement program will be operationalized using cameras that have been mounted at vantage points on the country's roads and highways. And then, President Akufo-Addo has extolled Ghana's democratic credentials, citing the country as a beacon of hope amid failing structures in fellow developing economies. He said although the British granted Ghana its independence, the West African nation had developed on its own democratic values, defying the many failing systems around the sub-region and on the continent to reach new heights of democratic governance. He said democracy, as experienced by the country, was the work of Ghanaians, and that for the past 31 years, Ghana had enjoyed peaceful democratic governance. And he said also, for the over 100 years of British rule, the British did not prepare Ghanaians for democratic governance. But what could have been expected from a colonial power seeking its interest, not yours? I'll take a quick swipe at pages 13, and maybe I'll end at page 13 before we go on the international front. As for Alassane Ouattara saying that Ghana paved the way for Africa, I believe that goes without saying, so I will not belabor the point. But a Ghanaian broadcaster and legal practitioner, Richard Sky, has filed a suit at the Supreme Court challenging the constitutionality of the Human and Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill, popularly known as the Anti-Gay Bill. Among other reliefs, the plaintiff is asking the court to restrain President Akufo-Addo from giving his assent to the bill for it to become law. In a writ invoking the jurisdiction of the Apex Court to interpret and enforce the Constitution, Mr. Sky is also seeking an order from the court to restrain the Speaker and Clerk of Parliament from presenting the bill to the President for him to give assent to it. He is further seeking an injunction against any attempt to enforce the bill, especially the aspect that criminalizes same-sex relationship. And it's a curious matter, Maxwell. It's a curious matter, that one. Tomorrow, for my blunt thoughts, it's one of the things I'm going to be talking about from different angles. People like Richard Sky, their positionings in the past and their current positionings, and whether there's any dichotomy, he's explained himself, and even people like Sam George, past and present. But what do you make of these stories I've read? So the constitutionality of the anti-gay bill, then Ghana as a beacon of hope, according to the president, and on the back page, the National Road Safety Authority rolling out speed limit technology mid-year. Your take?
Yeah, sure. So our democratic credentials, Ghana being a beacon of hope, yes, I agree that most of us have contributed to this. That's why some of us, during the 67th Independence Day celebration, we had to do a lot of retrospection and introspection. We want to see how far we have come as a country. Those who laid the basis for us to follow what we have all contributed as individuals and where we are now and where we hope to go. It's worth noting that governments and oppositions have all held us to do the best that we can do. The issue is our best practices as a country. We've done our bit and we are getting to where we intend to go to. We have some few lapses that we need to correct. Of course, we are not confident about where we are now, though, because the index, the democratic index, according to research, has fallen to the level we are not expecting it to be, and we expect to do better than we are doing. The Electoral Commission, when it comes to our processes of democracy and election, have not been up as we expect them to be. Yes, the president has said that every time we go to the polls, we do things better than we used to do in the past, and we grow and we become better by the day.
Right.
But the question, at the last time when 8 people were killed during our polls, what have we done about it? Has the president made mention of this thing anywhere in any of his speeches? What has been done to the people who had to shoot people and kill and maim the rest of them? So are we growing by killing 8 people in our election, or we are going back? So for me, in as much as I agree that we've all contributed to what we are experiencing today, Alassane Ouattara has credited us for being pacesetters in most of these things. But I think that once we can grow beyond some of these little things like the EC we are experiencing today, who have so many bodyguards guarding her for whatever reasons.
Right. I don't think that is the main issue. What is the thrust of what you're saying? The many bodyguards, that one. But what is the thrust of what you're saying? Because of time.
We used to know Afarijan. We used to see the former Charlotte Osei. Their consciences were clear. They had nothing to hide. And so they were walking in town freely. But why would all of a sudden our electoral commissioner have 6 military bodyguards walking in town? It means he has something to hide and she's afraid of something. So for me...
So because the person has more bodyguards, the person is doing something foul and has something to hide. Is that the logical reasoning?
How many bodyguards do you have walking in town? Because you don't have anything to hide. So once you are afraid that somebody may...
I am not a public official. Unless even the celebrities, so-called, how many of them walk around with bodyguards?
Yeah, so my point is that, you see, when people, you see, they say your appearances show who you are. So once you come to town and you are so scared about yourself, it means there's something you are hiding and there's something you are afraid of.
Okay.
My point is that the last election we held, this particular issue had to change the result how many times? 6 times. 8 people died. Nothing has been said and done about them. So she's afraid that somebody may maim her. That's why she goes to town with all these bodyguards. So my point is that, yes, in as much as we are saying that we are growing in our democracy and we are the beacon of hope, there are little things here and there that we can watch and grow beyond that, and then we can tout our democratic credentials. Now, about the LGBTQ plus thing, yes, we have said it already. Richie Sky, I want to believe that somebody is pushing him to do whatever he's doing. Yes, of course.
He hasn't come out to say that, so let's give him the benefit of the doubt. But like I said, tomorrow I'll reflect on some of his thoughts and posts in the past versus now. But of course, people can also, he can explain. He's given an explanation. We'll be fair in analyzing all of those. But he's entitled to his opinion.
I heard Aponyomak the very day the bill was passed in Parliament, specifically mentioning Richie Sky that he can go and test the law in the Supreme Court. Did you hear him say that? Did you hear Aponyomak?
It wasn't shown on air here, but I know he said that.
Yes, he said it. So my point is that if Aponyomak could specifically mention Richie Sky and his group, that he can go test that, and the next day or two, we saw him in the Supreme Court, it only presupposes that it's something somebody has cooked somewhere and is given to him to go and present. And so for me, it's nothing strange to me. That's their modus operandi, and that is the way they wish to go through this time around. And I'm sure the Supreme Court is waiting for them. They are people of conscience, and I'm sure they will do the right thing. The thing hasn't become a law. How then do you go and challenge its constitutionality or otherwise? Of course, he's saying that Parliament should be restrained from sending this bill to the President. The President should also be restrained from signing. The President himself has already indicated to the House that he wasn't going to sign until the court processes are over.
But there's an interesting perspective. Some have said, for example, that there was a challenge to the e-levy at the Supreme Court back in the day. President, hold for me. President Akufo-Addo went on to sign the e-levy. But in this instance, if the court strikes it down, it's going to be well nigh impossible for Parliament, even with 2/3 majority, to go ahead with this, because then the courts would have said it was unconstitutional, unless that could lead to some friction between two arms of government, or even three, because now there seems to be a lack of consensus between the legislature and the executive. And you could then rope in the judiciary. It could be a three-way fight. I don't know, a wrestling match or something of the sort. I'm not sure, but I guess opinions are opinions, and we'll see how things go. I guess the courts will also take into consideration all the other surrounding issues and matters. But let's go on the international front. Liberian president sets up task force to trace stolen state assets, and Liberian President Joseph Boakai has issued an executive order to identify and recover stolen state assets and prosecute complicit current and former officials under a crackdown on graft launched since his January inauguration. The order will establish a task force that will have the legal mandate and state funding to investigate and retrieve wrongfully acquired government assets and seek the expedition of the suspects involved, the presidency said in a statement. It did not name any suspects, but it's going on this. Would that we could do this in Ghana? You know, I don't care, NDC or MPP. It actually reminds me of, in a way, Peter Alajete leaving office and some furniture. Ghana, Kenya. Our country is funny. Your side is complicit, the other side is complicit. People, if we wanted to crack the whip and do the right thing on these things, I don't know how many of these officials would survive. But Kenyan politician vows fresh challenge to Haiti police deployment. A Kenyan opposition leader said he would launch a fresh court challenge to a plan to send police officers to gang-ravaged Haiti after the two countries signed a deal last week intended to fast-track the stalled deployment. And on page 9, where I'll end, also on the international front, Biden-Trump dominates Super Tuesday races. And so if you look at the count, the primary delegate count, Donald Trump has 1,051, while Nikki Haley, who pulled a surprise in Vermont, and also she won in Washington, D.C., has 86. Joe Biden has 1,568, and those uncommitted are 10. So I guess it's smooth sailing for both candidates. It's going to be part 2 of Biden and Trump. And Navalny's widow urges Russians to protest on election day. That's in Russia. Any thoughts, or should I move on to the Ghanaian Times newspaper?
Let's go to the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Yes, of course. I would have made my thoughts known about this Liberia president going after public assets.
You can go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So for me, like you said earlier, this thing should not be mentioned. They should not be said about that. Because for you to hold a public office to become a minister or a minister of state, you should be at some level of your life where you can provide some of these things for yourself. It should be, some countries, you should be able to provide your own you should provide residence for yourself, or you should have your own residence to be able to stay and do government work. You should be able to buy your own cars and drive your own cars. Once you are living, you live with it. Like parliamentarians, they were given loan to purchase their own vehicles. So why not state officials, so that they can also do it when they are going, you have a loan and you pay out. So for people to leave office and to be chased, and for government vehicles and other things, for them to be chased, to be retrieved, it beats my imagination. How? You have come to office, you have come to meet the thing. Right. You leave and you, and a new government they have to buy. I remember President Akufo-Addo came and said he was not going to buy new vehicles. Before we knew, they moved from Nissan Patrols and then Pajeros, and now they are buying Lexus for all the officers. Plenty of them. So some of this, and I'm sure that when they are leaving, they also take plenty of them away. And when we can, we'll also be chasing them for it. It doesn't speak well of us as a people. And for me, it's a waste of the taxpayers' money, yes.
Right. Let's quickly get into other papers. At 67th Independence Day in Koforidua, let's build consensus on our values. President admonishes Ghanaians. I'm actually interested. He mentions values, and the LGBTQ bill is also right there. Journalist goes to Supreme Court over LGBTQ plus bill. We've already spoken about that. Appointments Committee vets ministerial nominees, and 4 secessionists jailed 17 years. That's the story I'll look at in the Ghanaian Times, the secessionists. So 4 executive members of the Western Togoland Restoration Front have been sentenced to a total of 17 years imprisonment by the Accra High Court. Now, this was after the court presided over by Justice Mary Mame Ekwe Nyanzu found them guilty on various charges preferred against them. The accused, including a policeman and soldier, were tried on charges of being members of a prohibited organization, summoning meetings of prohibited organizations, attending meetings of a prohibited organization, and making contributions for the benefit of a prohibited organization. And so they were sentenced, but Michael Koku Kwabla Ametonu Gohe, aka Togbe Yesu Eduji, and a founder of the WTRF, was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. The court also imposed a fine of 12,000 cedis on Gohe, and in default, he would serve 1 year imprisonment. You can check out more details of that story in there. The Daily Guide also captures that story. Western Togoland Prime Minister and others jailed 17 years. Of course, we know the late Charles Komi Kujoji, aka Papavi, he has actually met his maker. Would you like to reflect on those before I bring in other stories from the Daily Guide?
Secessionist group, I think that, yes, government should deal with them the way the law prescribes. It's just unfortunate that usually when we get to election year, then we hear a lot more about these secessionist groups and their activities. And then the last time it was out of this that our borders in the Volta region were closed and heavily marked with security men during the elections. I don't know for whatever reason, but we're beginning to think that usually during election year, these things come up. And to put a lot of fear in the voters in the Volta region to prevent them from doing their movements very easily and also affecting our voter turnout in the Volta region. I don't want to believe that it's a subtle way of putting that fear back in us in the Volta region. It should be a genuine thing they are doing. People should be tried, yes. But the question is, how long have they been arrested? Yes, of course, the legal process grinds slowly. But I don't want it to transcend beyond law and order into wanting to bring more soldiers into the Volta region again, because we are approaching an election period that a lot of things that were done in the past would also happen again. That's my only fear, and I pray that it doesn't happen. But all things being equal, once you go against the law, you have to be punished, yes.
All right, so the other stories. We've overcome economic challenges, Nanado says so. In fact, reading from page 3, he says, fellow Ghanaians, I know that we have gone through difficult economic circumstances, but it is clear that we have overcome the worst and we should be looking forward to better times. If we are to take pride in being Ghanaian, there should be a consensus on the values we hold dear, and we should transmit them to every generation. This bit about values gets my attention. But there's also Mahama NDC boycott Independence Day celebration. Let's unite to build Ghana, Baumia says so. Let me look at that other story on page 3 and get your responses. So, former President John Dramani Mahama and the opposition NDC made a strong statement by boycotting the 67th independence celebration yesterday. Instead, Mahama issued a statement from home emphasizing the need for quality leadership, improved governance, and a robust economy. Why did your side boycott something as national as the Independence Day celebration? And what do you think about Akufo-Addo saying we've overcome our economic challenges and that we should stick to our values as a country? Quick thoughts?
Yeah, so Akufo-Addo is speaking from the comfort of his office in the Jubilee House. And so what he sees is what he says. But those of us down here know that we have not come close to overcoming anything, let alone turning the corner, as they say. I'm not sure we have. The situation is still that. We saw one of our parliamentarians, lady, on the floor of Parliament with kenke, with bread, and also with a bag of 5 kg or 4.5 kg rice, talking about the price difference between 2016 and now. And if that is overcoming our economic woes, then I believe that the president is talking in a negative direction. We have not come close anywhere to overcoming them. The macroeconomic indicators are there to guide us. And I'm not sure anybody is proud now as a Ghanaian, the situation we are having. Have we not experienced depreciation of the CD? We are going over 13 CDs now. So what's the president talking about? What is there? What is new for us to beat our chest about and say that we are doing good? Values, he said, LGBT is not a value.
And that should be your final point in about 30, 40 seconds. We have to go.
It's not a value. Corruption is not a value. Galamsey is not a value. Has he spoken about any of these things in his State of the Nation address? And he's talking about us holding dear to our values. I beg his pardon. He should go back and look at these things and come back and talk to us. I think that the president only throws words at us, not understanding or not too sure what he wants to tell us. Maybe somebody just wrote a thing for him to read through. But I'm not sure he has seriously reflected over this. I'm not sure if he did, he would be talking to us about this thing. Because seriously, we are decaying. And everything indicates that we are not doing better than we used to do in the past. And so he should review his notes and come back to us proper.
Maxwell, thank you very much for your time. The last headlines, the Accra Times, of Daily Guides falls a reportage. PNC guru jumps to defend Bagbin. Akufo-Addo was in Parliament to fulfill Article 67 and nothing more. Murtala Mohammed says that the Tamale Central lawmaker. Ablakwa slams Akufo-Addo for lacking compassion. Afram Plains North MP chases government over projects and ensure peace in Boku. Avoka charges Akufo-Addo to avert terrorist infiltration. Maxwell Lokutor is the NDC's parliamentary candidate for South Tone, and he joined us. Max, wonderful day. Now, right before we get into sports, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic helping us to bring you this segment. They're still offering you free prostate screening if you're a man, free fertility screening if you're a woman. Reach out to them at any of their branches here in Accra at Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi Kronoma here behind the Angel Educational Complex, Takrade Anaji State, Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswa, and Esiama and Zama. They call lines 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Sports is up next. Do stay.
Everybody knows Acrobato. And if you know Acrobato, it means you know Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic is my pillar. Let's hear what others are saying about Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Who will be careful Endpoint one?
Chesena me ankasa me period na se problems wom ntina ma wo ho idea ma me papa chesena nya asem ketewa na me coin point no mo hwe me mogam no mo hwe bibia na so mo meduro a me fire no ene ma won kra mienu hofro kwa na mkwan mu a eba
head everything yourself
me ma me no adwodwo eda ho a wontumi nante ene ne ko Endpoint o mama nuru a ene ne ho idea watimi asori anante.
That's Endpoint for you of Acrobato. Hello hey ohwehwe what che okay a free bra wo di Endpoint wa dance am me call you no me Johnson sema na enkoyie e person na my emre nyina na magina sabema na me be fear for there e ho na nyina jaresa. You heard everything. I have secret. Endpoint is my secret. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. I'm free.
Customer.
Nada bena mi twa me twa papa. Me twa 10 Ghana.
10 Ghana.
10 Ghana cedis.
Na no dia, say na obenya.
10 Ghana cedis no. Me dia. Maybe 54,000 Ghana cedis.
54,000.
540 million. Here.
£2. Bia e ma dumpe soft. Bia the one na me twa me di e skasa
e. Yeah. Ene na giga ade tena we. Tena wa boki. Draw no na asase no. Mami me volume.
Wait.
Aha.
Customer. What is?
Hey, make that big phone. Make that darling. Star 946 hash. Now that pick 4 numbers. What? I can draw when I don't know. 10 Ghana cedis, 54.
Yay,
Mario!
Numbers from 0 to 9 up to 3 times daily to become one of our daily lucky winners. Dial *946# to play now. Or you can also play online at www.gamepackgames.com. Game Park is regulated by the National Lottery Authority.
Hi, now let me share my wildlife experience with you at Safari Valley Eco Park.
Welcome to Safari Valley Eco Park.
Our electric shuttle pulled up and in no time our tour began. We were surrounded by wildlife from the moment we entered the Eco Park. We were greeted by experienced tour guides who took us through orientation and how to better enjoy the experience. Watch these animals roam freely in their natural habitat undisturbed by our presence. We saw zebras, sable antelope, brown crane, mara, silky chicken, nyalas, Shetland ponies, and so many animals I just couldn't keep up. Our tour guides taught us so much about the wildlife, their behavior, and how to interact with them. I even fed them. We also went fishing on a man-made canal. Then we took a break to have lunch in this serene environment. All this amazing experience for this price for adults? This price for teenagers. It's a bargain. As the sun began to set, it was time to go back home, but not before dinner by the campfire. It has been a thrill of a lifetime, and I can't wait till my next visit.
Safari Valley Eco Park, bringing you closer to nature.
Let's do sports now on the AM show. My name is Harun Mubarak. We start at Ghana's 67th independence anniversary, where President Akufo-Addo promised an exciting Africa Games ceremony tomorrow. Now, Ghana is hosting the multi-sports event for the first time in its history, and the government spent about $195 million on infrastructure, and about 13,000 participants are expected to be present for the 15-day continental event.
Been to Aqua Safari lately? Let me share my experience with you at the new Aqua Safari Resorts. When you arrive, you're greeted by warm smiles and introduced to your 24-hour butler who already has your itinerary sorted. Enjoy water sports activities like jet ski rides, kayaking, water sliding, flyboarding, and castnet fishing. You can even have your lunch here on the boat cruise. Experience horseback riding, tennis, and some golfing amongst a host of other activities. Let the tour guides take you through the sceneries of the Volta River, the mangrove forest, the friendliness of the animals, local and exotic birds, while you pet and feed them. You can have this large space for your conferences, corporate retreats, and so many activities as part of the package. We chose to have our breakfast with a beautiful sunrise right in front of our cabin. We had an amazing experience and I can't wait to return for more.
Visit Aqua Safari Eco Resort in Ghana, bringing you closer to nature.
It's good to stay strong together. It's good to share nutritious meals cooked with Fritol, a vitamin A fortified oil. Fritol, you deserve a life of goodness. This advert.
Welcome back, and we sincerely apologize for the technical hitch there. Now, during Ghana's 67th independence anniversary, President Akufo-Addo promised an exciting African Games ahead of the opening ceremony tomorrow. Now, Ghana is hosting the multi-sports event for the first time in its history. The government spent about $195 million on infrastructure, and about 13,000 participants are expected to be present for the 15-day continental event.
Hello Ghanaians, on Friday, 8th March, the 13th African Games will be officially opened in Accra, and we shall be playing host to 53 African nations that will participate in the Games. We've gone to a lot of trouble and expense to be able to stage the Games, and we are expecting them to be successful. I'm looking at our guest of honor, President Alassane Ouattara, and I wonder if I should draw some parallels. He has also just staged the AFCON 2023, which was postponed to 2024, instead of the scheduled 2023. The Games here, too, should have been held in 2023, but were postponed to 2024. Football tends to attract more attention, and therefore the AFCON in Côte d'Ivoire dominated the headlines for the 1 month it took place. The Ivorian national team, the Elephants, defied all odds and won the competition. I am not promising a Ghana clean sweep of track and field. That would be a miracle. But I'm promising a happy and exciting month for all our visitors. We in Ghana know how to set the lead. We did it in 1957. When we were the first African nation in sub-Saharan Africa to gain independence from colonial bondage. We have got other firsts with doubtful boasts, but we have always managed to get out of difficult situations with amazing grace. We owe it to ourselves and to the rest of Africa to be that shining black star. We owe it to ourselves and to the rest of Africa to continue to have a democracy of which we can be proud. And we owe it to ourselves and to the rest of Africa to be a prosperous nation. And we are getting there, and we shall get there.
Now, American Olympic gold medalist Edwin Moses arrived in Ghana yesterday as a special guest for the Africa Games. He landed in the afternoon at the Kotoka International Airport and received a rousing welcome from the crowd gathered to greet him. Edwin is a board member for Sports Equity Lab, which aims to drive social justice and inclusion in sports through rigorous research and community events.
The African Games. I'm here with the African Games and also with the Sports Equity Lab. We're doing some work here for sports equity. I'm a director of the foundation. And this is our chairman here, Dr. Tuakli. We're here to try to make a difference in the world of sports. That people run and finish the race. That's all you could expect. I don't have any expectations. I don't know who the athletes are. Track and field is a great sport, so in a sport like track and field, it's very objective. It is what it is. So I don't have any favorites. I don't even know who's running, but I'm sure it's going to be a great event.
Sports Equity Lab is a nonprofit organization that's committed to driving social justice and decency in sports. So we've got a great board of directors. One of our directors is the great Dr. Edwin Moses. I'm also on the board of directors, also a founder. We've got Sarah Klein, who's a great lawyer, and a multitude of volunteers. So our goal is to create equity and social justice in the sports field.
What has been achieved so far with that project? What have you achieved so far?
Oh, we've achieved a few things. We've done 3 events here in Ghana. This will be number 3. And each time we come, it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. We've got a great sponsor called On. It's a Swiss-based running company backed by Roger Federer. And they, similar to us, believe that human rights through sports and in sports is an imperative part of society. And so we're very much aligned with our sponsor, very much aligned with our mission, and hopefully here in Ghana, event number 3, on Independence Day at the African Games, we'll be able to further the mission of driving social justice and decency in sports.
Now, on February 8th, German side Stuttgart's under-12 team embarked on a trip to Ghana as part of the club's efforts to immerse the boys in a culturally diverse environment. There's more in this report. Accompanied by Yannick Ruppert, head of sports organization at the Stuttgart Academy, and Tim Kirk, head of training for the under-12 team. The visit is part of the club's social program, Caring for the Roots, which connects children from Europe with children in Africa. As part of the visit, the players built an aquaponics center using plastic bottles and also built a solar system for a learning center in a small fishing village in Krokrobite. They were engaged in football matches with players of the local community. Jane Zohungbogbo is the founder and CEO of the Krokrobite Chiltern Center, and she explains the impact of the experience on the local Ghanaian children.
So the work that we do is quite varied. We're very much a grassroots, community-based organisation, which means that when we do have visitors, we really don't offer them what I call a scrubbed up, sanitised experience of Ghana. It's very much real life. And we want them to see that because we want them to have a genuine experience. And from that, people learn, not just in this case, the young players that came to us from Stuttgart, as well as the parents and the coaches too. But also the young people and the children that we're working with and the other members of our community have a real opportunity to learn from them as well. So there are huge benefits for everybody.
Yannick Ruppert, on his part, explains how the Stuttgart youngsters would benefit from the experience.
Like, I think a lot of them were very, very pleased and see like we were, what privileges we have in a country like Germany, and how people have different obstacles in life that we might not experience in Germany. So I think this quite sums it up. I think a lot of them were it taught them humility in many ways, and I think that's a very important part of a process.
Stuttgart is not new to Ghana, having had Ghanaian players on their books dating back to 1994, when defender Joseph Addo first joined them. In more recent years, Black Stars midfielder Ebenezer Ofori featured for them, while Hans Nuno Sape was on their books in 2019. Currently, Guinean striker Serho Girassi is powering them to Champions League football with his 20 goals this season. Tim Kirk hopes the players will take the lessons learned on their trip to make them better individuals.
Almost ask the question, why is that? And it leads into a conversation of how complicated we here make our lives. And actually, they start to then question, okay, well, what is it that's actually important? And those conversations are taking place at the moment. And I think they make more sense of those conversations a bit later on, but the process of them starting to think about it is happening already. The second thing that is very apparent is how more confident they are. And my favorite part of the week was on the Saturday, the boys had to prepare a maths lesson or a maths activity. And really the maths activity is to spark a bit of interaction and engagement with the kids. And the kids go into this activity thinking, okay, I am going to teach the kids or help these kids in the area of maths. And it was particularly challenging this time because they had to do it in English. And these are kids who have been learning English for 2-3 years. And so they were quite nervous about it. But as the time goes on, they did it for about 2 hours. What you start to see is that it's not like the boys from Germany teaching the boys from Ghana or something. It ends up sort of being like that, where they start to learn from each other, and then it actually tips the other way, where our boys are learning more from them, and the confidence that they've gained from this, and it's hard to describe. You see an immediate change in their personality.
And all of this has been as a result of the club's careful integration programs that allows African players to thrive at the club. In that regard, the club is building the next generation of talents by introducing them to different cultures at such an early age. To the Champions League, and Manchester City cruised past Copenhagen by securing a 3-1 win, 6-2 on aggregate to reach the quarterfinals. Elsewhere, Real Madrid played out a 1-1 draw with Leipzig, but progressed with a 2-1 triumph. And that's how we end the sports here on the AM show. My name is Haruna Mubarak.
Taken here by Julian Alvarez, and there's the first goal, and what a finish that is from Manuel Akanji. It's taken Manchester City less than 5 minutes to score tonight, and that's a wonderfully controlled volley by Akanji into the top corner. Manchester City 1, FC Copenhagen 0. Great goal.
Certainly is a great goal. It's the outswinger. Akanji watches it all the way. And it's a really controlled finish. It's a brilliant finish, Darren. In fact, just watch it all the way, and then he just...
And it's another opportunity, and this time they've hit the bar through Rodri. Well, he had all kinds of time, and then he's thrown one in! What on earth is Grabara doing? Julian Alvarez with plenty of power, I'll give you that, but it's gone straight through the goalkeeper's hands. It's a nightmare start. City 2 up inside 9 minutes. I wish everybody could see your face, Robbie.
Yeah, there's plenty of power, but listen, Grabara knows he should save it. Well-worked corner. Rodri crashed it against the bar, but then the pace, I think...
Tonight, trying to support their team, enjoying the Champions League experience as much as anything else. Here's El Yunusi. I haven't really mentioned his name tonight, but he can power forward here for FC Copenhagen. Slip it through to us. A lovely... Oh, what a move and what a goal! Wonderful finish from El Yunusi in the end. After the cheekiest of back heels from the teenager Ori Oskarsson. And the crowd that we showed you really enjoying the night are enjoying it even more now, because that's a wonderfully crafted goal from FC Copenhagen.
Yeah, I said moments before, this City side will give up chances because the way they play. Look how high they are. Look, they're trying to squeeze the play, and then they're out. You know, look, it's 4 against 4. I know you got 2 City players running back, but the run, it's onside, and then that little flick there, as you say, that is beautiful. Then they can put.
Mateo Kovacic, Julian Alvarez. Now Rodri to try and get Erling Haaland in. He's managed to take the ball down and then make room for the shot and finish clinically. So that's another Champions League goal for Erling Haaland, who now has as many in the competition as Sergio Aguero. And he's done it in significantly fewer matches. It makes it 29 for the season. And this purple patch that he's on at the moment will strike fear into every other team in the Premier League and in Europe.
Great pass from Rodri, but it was the body language of Haaland just.
The race to Jubilee House is on. Ghana is at a crossroads.
It's time again for the people to choose, and the world is watching.
In a nation where every vote counts, every voice matters, there's one name you can trust for your election coverage.
JoyNews, your election headquarters.
A team of seasoned journalists will bring you up-to-the-minute updates, unbiased analysis, and the stories behind the headlines.
Your election headquarters brings you JoyNews 2024 election.
The election headquarters for an informed electorate. JoyNews, independent, fearless, credible.
Women in a frank conversation on gender parity.
Well, number one, at least recognize that they're there, because the first point of conversation is always that there are no women and they're not standing. They're there.
Join Dr. Angela Lusiki, United Nations Development Programme resident representative in Ghana, and Dr. Zaneto Ajeman Rawlings, MP, Clotte Collie, as we mark International Women's Day this week on Foreign Affairs.
Have you ever spoken to your dad about the fact that in the history of this country, no woman has been given the opportunity to lead this country, and that you would want to change something?
Yeah, I think maybe we wait and see.
Okay.
We wait and see.
Let me get out of family business.
When I look at the economic management team, it is quite clearly a fantastic team. Professor Jambafo, Senior Minister Yao Osafo Mafu. What a solid team.
This is an unaware government.
It is
is your essential guide to the pulse of Ghana's democracy. Election Brief offers you a front row seat to the latest updates, in-depth analysis, and comprehensive coverage.
What does this mean? We therefore project it is almost statistically impossible for President John Dramani Mahama to achieve 50% plus one. Our projection is that Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo will win the 2016 presidential election.
The champion, undefeated.
During this campaign season, our experienced team of reporters will bring you exclusive insights, breaking news, and unbiased reporting from every corner of Ghana.
The people have met him with excitement and they keep chanting Savior to imply that they believe that he holds the key to turning the economic fortunes of the country.
As vice president, I am like a driver's mate.